This session is now called Hosting an Accessible Influencer Fam Tour. But when I received notification that I would be presenting this session, it was called Hosting an Influencer Fam Can Be Tricky and Rewarding. I didn't love this title, but I kept it because I wanted to point out my feelings about this title of this session. So just to give you a little background on me, and I'm going to peek around the columns over there so I can see everyone, and kind of where my point of view comes from. I am a lifelong hotelier. I previously worked as a meeting planner and with a CVB, and I worked doing lots of influencer fam trips in very niche subject matter. I went on to work for TBEX, the Travel Blog Exchange, so I'm also work a lot with travel bloggers, content creators, so I've worked on kind of both sides, both the destination and with the content creators. And I guess the reason I was asked to be here today is because specifically in 2025, I am working with the lovely Tammy Reese of Visit North Alabama to do a year-long influencer campaign to highlight the accessible offerings across the northern 16 counties in Alabama. And so what that means is I'm going to reach out to 10 different content creators, preferred term to influencers in the community, to highlight various communities that can utilize the amazing offerings of Visit North Alabama. So the reason I hated this tricky and rewarding headline was, to me, every fam should be tricky and rewarding, not specifically because it's accessible. They should all be very hyper-focused on your audience and your mission. So we're going to cover just some fam planning basics to start with. Oh, except for my clicker's getting ahead of itself. I looked at my people who RSVP'd. Are we mainly destinations in here primarily? Yes. Do you plan a lot of fams? Influencer, content creator fams? Yes, yes. All right, so this is going to be some information you're probably familiar with. Where do you start, right? Define your objectives. What are you hoping to accomplish with bringing in these creators? Or are you just spending budget that you're going to lose? Like, you have a mission, right? Select those content creators. I don't have the time, but I would normally get up on my soapbox and talk about this selection process if I had more time, because it needs to match right back up with define your objectives. It should not matter necessarily. Follow count, you know, those sorts of, the platforms may or may not matter depending on who you're trying to reach out to. But I feel like our small niche, hyper-engaged creators get left behind sometimes. So select those content creators and plan the itinerary, logistics and coordination for your event, develop the content expectations. These are also known as your deliverables. Well, how many posts do I get? What are you going to write? What's it going to be about? To some extent. And engage and support those creators. This is kind of tough. I don't know if are there creators in the room. I see at least one. How often have you been brought into a destination and you're posting content and there are crickets because none of the partners are engaging with your content? Does that ever happen? Never happens, right? So engage and support those creators. Follow up for deliverables to make sure you're receiving those deliverables in a timely manner, and then measure your results, and then repurpose that content. That's the other thing that I see doesn't happen. I'm going to point to you. I'm so sorry. I apologize. That you create content, it never gets shared, you never see it again, it's one and done, and that is not great delivery on your investment. So those are just sort of the basics, and then we're going to talk about how we tailor. Personalize the experience. I'm going to get pulled off the stage with a hook on this one, because so often I think we get wrapped up in our destination and we think we know what our highlights are and what we want to tell the world about. And so many times that doesn't align with what the world thinks we are and what the world wants to hear about us. So consult with your creators in advance. Once you've chosen them, or as you're choosing them, what content is engaged with by their audience? What do they enjoy doing? What do they like writing about? What lights their fire so much that they're going to write and share more content than you ever asked them to, because you've shown them something that really is important to them. This is, of course, very specific to bringing in accessible content creators, is make sure that your accessible attractions and locations actually are accessible. I know that many hotels and attractions check that box that their brand sends to them. Yep, absolutely. And then your wheelchair user creator gets there and there's a threshold into the shower about this big that they're sharing on their Facebook Live. So do that walkthrough and make sure that you've actually checked that everything is accessible. But The other thing that I think doesn't get talked about is accommodating sensory needs. So oftentimes there's a co-sensory diagnosis with a physical diagnosis, and so make sure you're understanding the needs of your creator. I see a lot of times folks want to make the absolute most of every minute on the ground with their creator. We're going to pick you up at the airport, and then 5 minutes later we're going to take you to lunch, and then 2 hours after that you're going to have an afternoon snack, and then we're going to ride bikes for 15 miles, and then we're going to do dinner, and then dinner after dinner, and then a late night dessert, and the creator is exhausted and has consumed absolutely nothing but calories. Is that, you done that a time or two? Okay. All right, so we're on track here. So make sure you're thinking about all of these needs and that you're not gonna have any surprises along the way. Get your partners ready. Partners, we could all run great destinations if it weren't for our partners, couldn't we? So make sure that they are aware of their own accessibility, right? Train the staff and the partners on the language around disability so that they're talking to your guests the way that you would want them to, that they understand what the etiquette is. I even have some creators that I know what their sensory needs are. I make sure I chat with them before and determine whether or not they like to have their hands shook, if they want to be, how they want to be greeted, how they want to be addressed. And speaking of which, I failed miserably because I jumped right in. I forgot to introduce myself as being Leslie Walker. I am a Caucasian female who is old enough to know many things, but young enough to know that I still have much to learn. And I am a really hot green sweater right now in these lights. So that's me. And I'm very tall, I'm told. So that's me. On-site support. Designate someone trained in accessible travel to be available for assistance during the trip, so that someone understands the personal needs of your content creator. And if, for instance, that content creator needs a break in the afternoon for a nap because their meds kick in at a certain time and they need a break, or if their personal battery has run low, they have then a person to, on their behalf, say, we're going to go ahead and go, so that they're not put in a position to have to address that with your partners. So make sure that you have that on-site support and that liaison between your partners. However, I will say, in that questionnaire at the beginning where you're learning your creators, also see what their preferences are. Some creators want to be left alone. They do not want to see you while they're in your city, and some want you there to explain context. What is this? Why is it this way? How is it part of our story as a community? So make sure you understand what their style of travel and creation is and the time that they need to actually create the materials and the deliverables for you. That's the other place I feel that we fail oftentimes, is we are so jam-packed with activities. We don't factor in time for photos, for videos, for interviews, to actually take notes at the end of the day and recharge. So make sure you're building in that time for actual content creation. Do not make assumptions. Ask and they will tell you what they need. All right, and so accessible itinerary options. If your creator wants to see everything that you have to offer, but not everything is necessarily accessible because it's historic perhaps, or it's got some challenges, it's new and it's being renovated, whatever, make sure they realize the options and tell them what about it is accessible and what about it may not be. So then the choice is theirs of whether or not they'd like to experience this, see it, and then talk about its accessibility past, present, and future. All right, now make it special and add only the best kind of surprises. This is where my stalker gets activated. I think I've had a couple of stalker conversations with other people in this room. Stalk, anybody else? Research. It's research, not stalking. Go check out your content creators and see what lights them up and gets them excited. And then create what I like to call accidental, totally intentional experiences, where when you're out in your community, you stumble upon something that is their greatest desire, wish, and dream to experience, right? There's an old adage that says something along the lines of relationships built in moments of great emotion are those that stick and last and are long-lasting, right? And so if you're able to connect with someone on an emotional level during their time in your destination, You got them forever. You are friends forever. They will be your biggest cheerleader and your greatest advocate. So think about how you can create these experiences. I'll give you a couple of examples. I once hosted Samantha Brown. Everybody knows Samantha Brown, in my city, and watched a few of her videos back, and one of the tips that she gave is that she always traveled with peanut butter. Always travels with peanut butter, because if her protein got low or blood sugar got low, she could always eat peanut butter. Peanut butter was one of those things that it was shelf stable. She had all these reasons for eating peanut butter, and it was her favorite thing. So we never discussed it. I didn't talk to her about it. But one night while we were out having dinner, we have a local restaurant that makes homemade ice cream, both adult liquor ice cream and regular ice cream. And they made for her both a pint of peanut butter ice cream and a pint of peanut butter Kahlua ice cream that she could take back with her to her hotel room and keep in her freezer while she was there in our city, so that she could enjoy her peanut butter on the go. And so, of course, we referenced the peanut butter nod that she gave, but never talked to her about we were providing the peanut butter. I was trying to think, there was another really great one that I was like, yeah, that's totally just happened. I had a group of influencers in who are all writers. And it just so happened that, oh goodness, I'm going to forget his name because I'm on stage now. The Museum of Art was having a speaker series, and one of the speakers was Bernstein, Woodward and Bernstein. It was Bernstein. Anybody, the first name? Carl, thank you, was speaking. And he's a writer of like the greatest acclaim and recognition and like, a national treasure. And so I bought tickets for the entire fam trip to go and see him speak. Could they write a piece about that they could share with their audiences about what you can experience in my city that a visitor could come back and do? Absolutely not. Did it make their entire stay, and were they for the rest of the time going, holy smokes, that was amazing, thank you for making that happen? Absolutely, and I will tell you, that was 8 years ago, and I work with every one of those content creators every year. We are still friends, we talk. I have visited them at their home in Scotland when I have gone there. So those emotional experiences will make an advocate for you forever. Okay, so Tammy, do you recognize some of these? Share with your community. So a lot of us have talked about how hard it is to get buy-in for accessibility amongst our partners. If you're creating these experiences where you have accessible content creators come in, make sure you're sharing afterwards. Sharing the traffic that they get, the engagement that they get, what they had to say about your city, and how that they were promoted individually for their efforts. Everybody loves a good pat on the back, but if you're not sharing this content, one, the greater community is not going to know that you have these offerings, and your partners won't realize the value of working with you when you bring in accessible creators.